part of the reason why I created Health Coach Academy is to just let health coaches know about the passion that they have can be turned into a business. And most of the time when a health coach decides that they're going to wrap it up and not be a health coach, or at least share their knowledge with other people, it's usually because they're not making it financially. And that's really where the genesis of Health Coach Academy is to have people like yourself on the show to talk about the business components of it, like how to really monetize stuff so that they're able to get into a position where they can do what they really love full time. Welcome to another episode of the Health Coach Academy podcast. I'm your host, Omar Coverbatch of OmarCoverbatch.com. Appreciate you joining me as always. And today we have a return guest. And it's a very rare thing that I have someone come on the show multiple times. But me and Isaac Ho had hit it off so well last time. And we wanted to go in a different direction, right? So most of my shows, as you know, following me for these years, I'm just putting out the guests. I'm doing a lot of different topics that I think are relevant to health coaching, but sometimes we don't really get into the fact of like why we even believe in the health coaching space. And that's something that I think that right now I wanted to share with you. Now, one of the things that this episode transformed into was really just a casual conversation between me and Isaac about our passion for health coaching and why we are in this space and why we believe that there should be more of us out there. And it kind of flipped because he almost interviewed me. And after I thought about it, I think I should have done that a little bit more often. Obviously, I love interviewing people, but unless you caught me on other people's podcasts, which I do frequent at times, you might not know a lot about my story. And this was actually a pretty cool opportunity to get some valuable information on Isaac and, of course, his tips and whatnot, but also a little bit of insight into me and my journey in this health coaching space. So I'm definitely excited to share this episode. It's a little different from the usual. Hope you enjoy our conversation. And I'm thinking if this is a success, I would love to do more and really just have casual conversations just about a number of topics, including, of course, the business stuff that we want to keep up in the health coaching space so that we can make the money that we deserve and have successful practices. So we're definitely going to jump into that. As always, please leave a rating and or review on iTunes. It is greatly appreciated. I continuously get awesome guests like Isaac and really just move me up in the ranking so that we can really get this message out there. So let's jump into the show. Hey, Isaac, welcome back to the show. I usually don't have many guests who actually come back a second time because I choose that. So you were that good the last time where I'm like, I got to have him back. And again, as mentioned in the intro, we've been connecting ever since our initial podcast, just had a lot in common and a lot of beliefs that we unearthed that very similar. And just because your passion for health coaches equals mine, I just figured, you know what, let's get back on it and have like a different type of show, a little bit more conversational. I don't have any questions prepared for you today, Isaac. And it's really just a conversation. So, some of the conversations we've had off the air over the last few months anyway. And I thought it was just invaluable to share with the audience.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me back. And it's been wonderful to get to know you since our first recording. And I've loved connecting with you. I think the thing that I was shocked about, man, is like I listened to your podcast and I'm like, I learned all this cool stuff about people, or maybe, listening and hearing me talk about myself. But once I got to know you, I went, wow, Omar has a really, really cool story that most people have probably never heard before. And what it really drew me back to was like, why did I become a health coach? Why did Omar become a health coach? Why does the world need health coaches? And it made me think, like, man, we got to do like an impromptu conversation about why this is so important, because it's Health Coach Academy. So the only reason it matters is the world must need health coaches. And when you shared your story with me, it made me really think about my life and the people that have come and gone and passed in my life, and really what I hoped someone else would have advocated or been a health coach for to help solve these problems, and even the problems I've had in my own physical pain. Mm-hmm. And I'm really excited to talk to you about that today. So, we're kind of doing an impromptu, but, I think the first place I just want to start with is like, the story that you told me that I haven't been able to get out of my head since we talked about it, about your sister actually having lung cancer and passing. Would you be open to sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so funny that while she was alive, one of the things obviously that I wanted to do was actually help her get through, her situation. But I thought that she should write a book. I'm like, this book would be a bestseller, or maybe not, but it would have been such an important book where people need to know her message. So, the long story short, my sister was literally coughing like the devil was coming out of her. It was like if they want to, it sounded so crazy that we were like, Dana, you have to go to the doctor. And she's one of those people who she'll go to the doctor over anything. So she was going. So she went to the doctor. They gave her cough syrups. They've given her antibiotics. They've given all these kinds of things that just were not working at all. And I'm like, damn, you got to go get a second opinion. She was kind of loyal to her doctor. The doctor was someone who she's been seeing for probably at that point 20 something years. And she was really just confiding in that doctor, despite the fact that the doctor consistently said, oh, you know what, you probably just stressed out. You have 3 children. You probably need a vacation. You need to lose weight. All these other things that were given to her as far as advice was going, and no tests, no scans, no x-rays, no tests whatsoever. And we just saying, something's obviously wrong. This stuff isn't working. You're getting all this different medications and whatnot, and you still sound like you have a serious, serious issue here. This went on literally probably almost a year. And then she finally switched doctors. Actually, my primary care doctor, she finally said, let me give this a shot. First day, the doctor orders a scan for her. Lo and behold, she has stage 4 lung cancer. Stage 4. So, and we're talking about this journey was like a year of just being led in the completely wrong direction regarding her health. It's like, again, she wasn't like neglecting it. She wasn't in a situation where she had her head in the sand about anything. She was actively looking for something that was going to make her better. And she wasted a year of life. I mean, so one of the things that I've always said, we all know when there's something wrong. And I've been the person who has gone to a doctor and they say, yeah, no, you're fine. And I was like, thanks. And I just left because I don't really want to hear any bad news. But I always go back to her story because, if they had caught it a year before, she'd probably still be here. I mean, the other situation too, and I hate giving the doctors credit, especially in her situation, but she never smoked. She was 32, never smoked. It was almost like you would never think that that was the case because it doesn't fit the description. But at the end of the day, that's what it was. And just because of her not being able to advocate for herself. And again, the doctor probably spends, how you go to the doctor, they give you 5 minutes of their time, give you a prescription, and you're on your way. I've always felt possibly if she had a health coach, someone who was in her life a little bit more than the 5 minutes, which that's what health coaches do. We're supposed to really go and dive deep, providing the person with an opportunity to actually express all their concerns at that point over, maybe an hour. They might have related to the doctor that there's a lot going on here that you're not actually getting as far as information wise. And that's one of the things I've always felt we were core components to getting to the root of some of these issues. And that's one of the reasons that I was such a big fan of the health coach profession and what they're able to do. And that's kind of one of my many why stories of why I think that health coaches are important. And that's how we should get along and try to get more out there because the need is incredibly necessary at this point. I mean, we're the unhealthiest we've ever been in this country and probably at this point the world, and it's not getting any better.
Yeah. Wow. And how old was your sister, Omar, when she
She
passed?
passed, 38.
Wow.
Yeah,
And she had how many kids?
3. Three kids.
Three. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Are you-
what's amazing again, having stage 4 diagnosis right out the gate. I mean, she lasted 6 years,
mhm.
and the kids were never just someone like at this point. I'm trying to remember their ages, but I know for sure my niece might have been 4 when she was diagnosed, and if she had passed when she probably was supposed to pass, like
Mhm.
she, my sister would just have been a picture on the wall for my niece with her father, right? Like she might not have had that memory developed enough to actually remember her in any meaningful context, but because she fought for so long, she knows her mom, and that was
Mhm.
one of the other things that was amazing in that story because again, like she spent 6 years, past when she was around 10, and she has some memories, which is one of the things that I'm happy about that she can take with her, since she's just not a faint memory in at least my niece's mind.
Right. Yeah. Wow. And it's really interesting, Omar, because both my grandpas, they both passed on both sides from lung cancer, actually. I
Really?
think that's one of the reasons why I'm like, wow, when I heard the story. And I remember being 6 years old and us taking my grandpa 3 hours away for chemotherapy in Portland.
Hmm.
And, it's funny because it's like I'm 6 years old. My grandpa's not doing well. I always see him just in his chair and looking out the door, and he was too sick and weak to actually go outside. So they didn't want him outside. So we would leave the door open. He would sit inside the house, looking out the window, looking out the open door. And I remember like that was the memory of my grandpa. He could not move. He was sick. And honestly, I remember going and having McDonald's breakfast on our way to Portland. Like that was the most exciting thing about waking up at like 5 a.m. and driving down there. And some people know this, but my dad's actually an MD, and my brother is an optometrist. He's an eye doctor. He used to be an RN. My sister's an RN. They come from like a long history of classic allopathic medicine. And I think for me, the thing is, they did smoke. Both of the grandpas on my family, they did smoke.
Hmm.
And I wonder, like, what life would have been different if someone had gotten to the root of like, okay, this addiction and this numbing out of I need to smoke and I need to drink box wine. I remember box wine. Like I knew about box wine at 7 years old because my grandpa would sit there at the table with a giant box of box wine. And when I grew up, I thought wine only came in a box because that's how much he drank. I didn't even know it came in a bottle. And it's like these were people that were deeply unhappy. The cancer was not a mystery. I mean, there's behaviors. And I think for me, a lot of it is going like, is anyone curious and advocating for these people to really heal and be happy? Or are they going to keep having to numb out with substances that just keep
Mhm.
making them sicker and sicker and sicker? Um, yeah. And when I heard your story, I mean, I also like I connect with your story so much because I had a best friend of mine. She actually, a brilliant lady. She was a lawyer, and she was also a health coach and a life coach. And she started getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And she went to her doctors. They did all this testing, and they basically just said, "Listen, you're overweight. Uh, you need to lose weight." Now, this is someone who's already lost like 160 pounds,
Oh
and
wow.
after losing that weight, is now getting sicker. Okay. And all of a sudden is having neurological problems. And they're just like, yeah, you're overweight and you need to lose weight and eat healthier. And I was her roommate for years. I've never seen anyone eat cleaner in their whole life. And one day she stopped messaging me. I'd moved out, didn't hear from her a few days, was really worried about her. And went to check on her, and all her lights were on, the dogs were barking, and she had actually passed. She passed out, hit her head, and was deceased. When the police came into the house, she had been dead for days. And I was like, wow, that's our health coach. That's someone who's a personal trainer, who's a health coach, a life coach, who's going to the doctors, getting tests, and is now deceased. And there's a few things. It's like, yes, we need to get tests, but there's also a lot of ways of looking at things that we're not going to necessarily see from the normal test, or it's the way you interpret the test. So, for example, like let's just talk. It's like stool samples. Okay, cool. A lot of times I'll say, people got stool tests and they go, well, the stool test says there's nothing wrong. There's just like a little bit of bad bacteria. I shouldn't be really having issues. Well, I mean, the way you read that test matters because if it's a stool test, it's based off proximity, so the large intestine. So should those strands of bacteria even be in the large intestine?
Mm-hmm.
And if you find a little bit and you say it's okay, you could be missing lots of problems because it shouldn't even be close. So, there's so many ways of let's say evaluating or looking at healing opportunities that can get missed. And I understand, like my dad, is a retired MD. You don't have a lot of time, and you really want your MDs to be fantastic at understanding medication because they're going to hand out medications. They're going to recommend surgery. They don't have time to learn microbiology that takes
Right.
18 years. They
Yeah.
just don't. They don't have time to sit there and do that. It's like someone else is going to have to pick up the buck and say, hey, MDs are doing everything they can. I have so many clients that are physicians, and they will refer me people. Like I have a GI doc who owns several private practices in the city, and he'll refer me people when he's like, yeah, parasitology came back negative. I know they have SIBO, but it's like I haven't maybe done enough work on SIBO specifically to be able to maybe like eradicate her specific kind of SIBO because there's so many different kinds of SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And, this is someone who is running 2 practices, doing lots of testing and doing surgery,
Mm-hmm.
like literally cutting people open. Like he doesn't have necessarily the time to go learn this. And, he's aware of that. So he refers out. And I think, as health coaches, like we have to be connected as a network to say like, hey, there are so many ways that someone could be served. Let's make sure they're getting the right resource and make sure that person is actually looking for the resource, because I think the saddest thing is to see someone in pain and to just be like, yeah, you have pain and I don't have a recommendation for what your next step is to advocate for yourself, and living in this state of dysfunction until it gets worse and worse and worse and possibly becomes cancerous from the stress. Like, that is a really, really bad place to be.
No,
And
absolutely.
your sister's story is an example of that. So let's talk a little bit about your health coach journey, Omar. Like, because I know that you've done a lot of different things in your life, and I'm actually really inspired about some of the stories you've told me about your childhood. Um, like with your dad in the neighborhood you grew up, but maybe people don't know that story. Would you just talk a little bit about the neighborhood you grew up in and the decisions you made to end up, I guess we could say, not in jail? I don't know, a
Yeah.
different word for it.
No, yeah. I definitely escaped, right? I definitely got out. I don't want to say unscathed because actually I talked to a therapist, and one of the things that they do say is that when you live in a neighborhood like that, sometimes it's not like the trauma of an event happening where I can be like, that's why I'm messed up, right? Like that, because that happened to me. It's like when you live in such a bad area, it's almost like you're in a war zone in essence, right? So you're always concerned about getting jumped or getting robbed or just having all these different issues. So I grew up in Long Island City, Queens. The area is pretty famous. It's called Queensbridge. Some of your favorite rappers, I'm sure, like Nas and Mobb Deep and all those guys were neighbors of mine. So it was interesting. Never fall into any of the traps necessarily. I'm sure I've had some things that I can't mention on a podcast that's international at this point and incriminate myself. But I was just lucky to have a father who was super overprotective of me and grew up in the projects himself for in his entire life up to that point, who knew what the hell was going on. It was just really as simple as that. I mean, he saw everything, he knew everything. There was nothing that was going to get by him, and understanding the neighborhood and all the shenanigans that were going on. It was really bad. It was in the 80s. Crack was prevalent. Like you saw just a lot of drugs, a lot of violence, a lot of stuff that happened there. And one of the interesting things is talk about, like, I guess, being aware of health. Um, Even in that environment, we always had vegetables. It was
Huh.
like, it was something like a meal was never complete unless you had some greens. That was just
Uh-huh.
something that they did. Like, we didn't have access to like the neighborhood supermarket was a supermarket that didn't have what I'm growing up in now, but we used to actually go to the supermarket that was outside the neighborhood because we just had an awareness that the food inside the projects was not good. So I remember just we were walking up. It's called 21st Street, probably about a mile and a half, 2 miles, just to get better groceries until eventually we got a car and we started to actually drive and do that kind of stuff. But yeah, that was the neighborhood that I grew up in, and it wasn't a great experience as far as like I thank God that I will never bring my kids up in a neighborhood like that. Just being from there it was an experience that you do definitely want to spare your children from. They wouldn't have to know that.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's like, you grew up in there. And I think what's really interesting when you said that you guys actually went and walked like 2 miles to get better groceries. Like, that's incredible. Like, you actually knew the difference. And I'm sure not everybody did that, because I have clients that live in New York and they tell me, oh my God, how hard it is to get groceries. Like, you got to get on a subway. How do you get a grocery cart? You got to lug it. It's like one of the hardest things. And it's not like where I live, it's like everyone has cars. We just drive up there, but not necessarily the same thing. So what do you think it was about your dad that he was like, let's spend the energy, or your mom maybe, like, let's invest the 2 miles each way and go lug these groceries because it's like that important that we eat vegetables?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually should ask him what was that about. Um, and I guess I'd have to say it's probably my grandmother. Like my grandmother at the time, his mom, my father's mother. She was very aware. She didn't grow up in the projects there. She actually grew up in Jamaica, Queens. And I think I shouldn't say she, I think, but she definitely had access to better, like as far as the groceries were concerned and stuff like that. So when she moved there and saw what was available to her specifically there,
she was like, oh, hell no, I need that.
Exactly. Yeah. And then we just took it up that 2 miles away and kind of took it from there. Yeah. That was definitely one of the things.
So your grandma had a different experience in what health should be like. And when she saw it wasn't like that, she was like, wow, okay, I know I need to make an effort. So what I know is healthy gets passed on to my family. That's incredible. And I think, when we think about health coaches, it's like, one of the things we're doing is we're getting ourselves healthy. Like every health coach I know has pretty much been through trauma. Been through trauma, had something happen, had to heal from it. And they go, oh, it's not normal to be in that state. It's not normal to be messed up like that, to feel like that, to be that tired, to be that sick, to cough like that. And then when they heal that, they go, you know what? Like other people think that's normal. They have no experience to say otherwise. Like your grandma did. They're like, oh, the food should be a lot healthier. And there's not, there's the ability of passing it on. That is so incredible. Like that story of your grandma. I know we talked about your grandma before, because and we'll get to it later, because your grandma, I was comparing the health of my grandparents to your grandparents. I was like, man, your grandma's killing it compared to my family. But she had an experience of health. And I think like as health coaches, us knowing what healthy feels like. I remember, man, I was talking to a good friend of mine, and he's like, he's like a beer rep sales guy, right? So he's just like, he drinks like 6 beers a day. And part of it is with the accounts. And I was just like, interesting enough, his wife is a dietitian. But I was like, dude, don't you like feel, and she's a medical dietitian too. So she's not just like, oh, we get a little healthier. This is like keeping people alive. I was like, don't you feel like shitty after 6 beers a day, like 5, 6, 7 days a week? He goes, no, I feel great, man. And I was like, oh shit, man, if I drank, 3 beers a day, I'd feel like garbage. I mean, there's a time where I thought like, nice whiskey at the end of the day. And then I was just like, nah, I feel like garbage. And it was so funny. He came over to my house and he goes, hey man, you got some socks I can borrow? And I was like, you don't have to wear socks, man. Just come on in. He goes, you do not want me walking on your carpet, man. I got some nasty fungus on my feet.
Oh boy.
And this is the guy who just told me he felt great. And he forgot he had fungus over his skin. You know what I'm saying? From all the yeast.
Oh yeah. No, people don't realize like what it is to feel great, and that's one of the things. Like it's just you get used to how you feel. That's like normal, and so that once you normalize whatever that is, that's just what it is, you know.
Yeah, it's crazy. And as a health coach, this would be fun. I mean, tell me some of the things you've gone through with your health that you went like, I'm having this experience. Maybe it's not normal. Let me go heal this in myself. And then you go, wow, that definitely wasn't normal. I'd love to hear some of the things you've been through because as a health coach, we all have our own version of what we had to heal. So like, tell me some of those for you.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up because it's actually an interesting story and kind of like really the genesis of, I think, how I officially, if you want to give me the timeline of when did I become a health coach, or at least what was the origin story of it. Um, it had to do with I follow the rules. So if you were my health coach and you told me to do XYZ, I would do XYZ and not question you. So um, but I didn't have the luxury of having Isaac O as a health coach. I had mainstream media, a little bit of sprinkles of internet, and I had to find this stuff out on my own. But I just guess my personality, especially when it came to um, health and just athletics and stuff like that, there was just nothing that I would do that I would quit on. So if I'm trying to lose weight and I ran 4 miles, I was like, all right, this isn't working. I'll just run 5. If it was an hour in the gym and it's not working, I was just okay, I got to go an hour and a half. So I always had this mentality that I was going to outwork my health issues, right? And then I kind of, I don't want to say stubbornly. I just like maybe this is, I don't know if it's a flaw in my personality, but I just don't quit and just keep running into the wall no matter how. I just think it's like a weird thing that I have. And basically what happened was I was, at the time I actually was a vegetarian. I was a very bad one now that I look back without the proper guidance of how to
Like the cookies and salad vegetarian. that one.
yeah, no meat is good to go. Whatever that is. And yeah, so just the same thing, no, not losing weight, just working out, doing what I have to do. And then I kind of stumbled on a YouTube video.
I gotta ask you this question though. Like, why did you want to lose weight at that time in your life?
Well,
like why was that important to you?
Aesthetics. Like,
were you married at the time?
No, I was just saying I was a single guy.
And how old were you, dude?
Probably 28-ish, 27.
Okay, so you're a single 28-year-old vegetarian in the gym.
That sounds
trying to find a partner. No, but this is I just want to flesh the story out. You're like, man, if I don't get some abs on me, man, I might be single till 38.
Yeah, that was my thing. I'm like, I'm trying to be market ready.
Hey, we all been there, man. That's why I lost the weight. I was thinking about that in 5th grade. Like, man, I'm not market ready. I'm gonna be single. I'm gonna carry this the rest of my life. I better. Men's Health magazine was my first fitness coach. Anyway, that's a different story. Yeah. But so you're working out. You're veganish, vegetarianish.
Yeah,
Plus a cookie.
Yeah, and it was a hot mess. And basically, what happened was, I'm listening to going down the YouTube rabbit hole. Actually, it wasn't about health. It actually started out about kind of the conspiracy stuff. I was looking into like fluoride in the water, right? And it was a guy who was just basically saying like, it was something bad. Then I go down the rabbit hole, watch another video of his, and got another good topic. And then he comes across sugar, and I'm like, wow, okay, so this is interesting. I'm listening, and he's breaking it down how sugar's so bad for you, this, that, the other, and I'm like, I try every diet. Like I said, I was a vegetarian at that point. I was like doing all kinds of other Atkins at one point. I was just doing whatever, right? So I'm like, I'm gonna try. And I looked at my diet and again, being a terrible vegetarian, my breakfast was a banana, a Dunkin' Donuts coffee with milk and 3 sugars. So if you do the math right there, you're like basically 50 grams of sugar for breakfast, no protein, nothing in that, just some sugar carb laden disaster, right?
Yeah.
Like, all right, let me let me switch this. Let me try to cut the sugar out. And Isaac, when I tell you, I lost so much weight, it was ridiculous. Like it was people were coming up to me asking me, "It's like, man, are you okay? Like you sick or something?" I was like, "No, I just cut sugar out." Nah, that's not what it is. Like they
Yeah.
thought they were like concerned because it was
Right.
coming off so fast. And then at that point, I'm like, man, if I could just change this one thing, no matter how hard it was, because I was definitely a sugar addict.
Mm,
I was like, what else can you do? That I
mm.
started diving down that rabbit hole personally and just signed up to IIN, which was where I went to health coaching school. And I'm like, I want to share this with people, like this is something that I mean, people need to know because again, like I wasted so much time
Uh-huh.
on my own just trying to figure stuff out. I was like, this is crazy. If I had known, I would have been years and years ahead of myself.
You would have been market ready at 23.
Yeah, which could have been a bad thing too. Like,
Which could have been doesn't always work out, I'll tell you that.
Well, how about you? I know that you had a great story. Like I said, you were struggling with this early on. Like as far
Yeah.
as to be aware
I,
of that at that age, I think is really impressive as well.
Yeah, well, it was actually, it's funny because part of it was like cosmetic. Like, okay, girls aren't really attracted to me because, you look around. I looked around and I went, well, of all the kids in my class, I'm definitely second or third fattest. So that's not good. And first fattest is like his man boobs are showing through his school uniform. So I was like, second, third fat. I had to wear a sweater just so, people didn't see nips all the time. And so like there is that part of it, right? But it was really interesting. I think about it. Because I remember being so fat that I had all these stretch marks on me. Like my back had these ridges, and my dad's an MD, so I was like, "Hey, I got these marks on me." He's like, "Oh, those are stretch marks. Kids get stretch marks all the time." Now that I know what I know, it's like as I got older, it's like I started having all this weird back pain, and it's like I'd be like, "Okay, I'm doing the exercise right. Am I doing it perfectly?" Started working with some very in-depth people, and we're just talking about. So it's funny you mentioned this. Is like I didn't realize, like most people don't know this, but stretch marks are actually a maxing out of the connective tissue in the body.
Mm.
So if you got a maxing out of connective tissue, what do you think is going to happen to the rest of the tissue around it? Well, it's actually going to get warped, which means that everything's going to adjust itself, which means those stretch marks were actually a problem. But, when I was little, I never thought they were a problem because, my dad was just like, oh, there's stretch marks, everyone gets those. But I actually had a lot of back pain at the same time I had those stretch marks. And my back would be hurting all the time. I'd sit in class, my back would be hurting. I'd be NPE, we do anything, my back would be hurting. And it's like, dude, I'm 8 years old and I've got back pain. And, I had stretch marks on my legs too. So it's like, I'd be sitting on the floor and my knees would hurt. I'd had knee pain and back pain. And I thought a lot of it was the weight. And it was the weight. But, now it's like, as I've gotten in better shape, it's like, man, I still have a lot of those problems. And, even being in really great shape, of course, in your 20s, you're kind of bulletproof. But I was like, some of this stuff is still not right. And so for me, it was a lot about the pain that I experienced, like an awareness of that. It's like, I wanted to be market ready, but I really just didn't want to hate my experience in my body all the time. And I think I shared when I was on your podcast, it's like the biggest notifier to me something was wrong is when we were like walking around the mall when I was like 5 or 6. It was traumatic enough that I remember it at five or 6. And I ended up having raging diarrhea from eating a Cinnabon. And I browned my pants in the middle of the mall. We were on this trip. I was having a great time. We all shared a Cinnabon, my mom, my older brother, me. And I had such a bad reaction to it. I just had raging diarrhea until we had to go home. And my mom, took me to Sears, bought me new underwear. I just destroyed those. And she just kept swapping them because she didn't know what to do. I wasn't potty trained. I was potty trained, but I just having diarrhea all the time. And, my stomach just wasn't good. And, the part of why I'm interested in GI health, it's like some of the things I've had to go through. It's like for a while, I had really itchy butthole. Like, I don't know if you ever had your butthole itch so bad you cannot sleep. And I remember just being like, am I some weirdo that just wants a finger up my butt? Because I am like having this weird Itching, it's like nothing can relieve it. And like I didn't realize it was an inflamed large intestine. Like it's an inflamed colon. And you get that from like candida and different kinds of bacterial infections. And a lot of the stuff I've had in my life where it's like, you know, you're talking about this cough thing. For a while, I had this really bad cough, man. And it was really worrisome because being a health coach, I was like, dude, I got this cough now. I can't train anyone or talk to anyone because I'm coughing all the time. And then I lost my voice. And then my throat hurt real bad. And I got diagnosed with strep, and it became chronic for months to a point where I couldn't talk. Of course, they gave me antibiotics, and that didn't work. And they were like, I guess we'll just take your tonsils out surgically. And I was like, well, I don't know if I want that, just because I know once they cut it out, it's gone. And, I had to learn some things. And luckily, I was connected with resources that resolved it. But I know for a lot of people, they get their gallbladders out, they get their appendix out, they get their tonsils out. And those are all bacteria storing glands. And if you don't understand enough about bacteria, you think it's like, oh, maybe it's normal for my butt to itch and for me to have fungus and for me to have warts on my feet and for me to have a loss of my throat and to itch at night and take Benadryl all the time, and like I've been through all that. I was allergic to the sun for about a year, like
Really?
literally allergic to the sun. Yeah, it was terrible. And I remember having to wear long sleeves everywhere I went. I went to the beach at nighttime when I was on vacation because I was having such a bad histamine response to the sun. So a lot of, yes, I wanted to be market ready. That was kind of my first motivation, but I also just didn't want to have to go to the beach at night. That's a lot of, sometimes people are like, oh yeah, you've done a lot of studying and, you've done a lot of therapy. And I'm like, yeah, it's because my life kind of sucked if I didn't figure it out. Right. So yeah, that's interesting. But I think, like the emotional work that I do with clients. Yeah, I just talked to a client right before this about it. I was like, yeah, I had to do the emotional work because my relationship with my parents was so rough. I'd get so angry. I remember my dad and I just standing at a restaurant yelling at each other in front of everyone. And it's like, it was just brutal. And like trying to have a conversation with my mom. And it's like every advice she would give me would just trigger me. It's like I was just so much pent up. So, and I know like there are probably health coaches listening to this. They'll like, yeah, like I've gone through that or I'm going through that or I help people with that. And it's like, man, people need that because most people, it's like they're not even conscious that that's like an issue. They're just like, I'm angry all the time, and they think it's everyone else's fault, and they have these huge festering wounds inside them, and they just draw this rotten maggots to it, and it just keeps getting worse and worse, and it's incredible. So yeah, I mean I realized for myself, like I had some things I had to solve.
Oh no, yeah, no. That's one of the other beauties of health coaching too. Is like you do get to dive into that part of it, where as far as the emotional issues that happen with potential clients, and just it's interesting because it's not just about the health. There's so many other dynamics why we might engage in behaviors that we don't necessarily think that are good for us, and that's something that we are allowed to have that time and to provide a space for our clients to talk about that part of it as well. And then it really puts everything together, and it's just the experience is a really good experience. I think just working with health coaches because of just the layers of assistance we can provide too.
Sure. And also just like, I know for you, like telling your sister, like, hey, maybe you should get a second opinion until she did get that diagnosis. It's like, as a health coach too, I think one of the coolest things is we can always be open to what other solutions are there. And I remember, like, I was telling you this earlier, we were having this conversation, but I had a client that, she's like, oh, I'm feeling dizzy. And I'm like, well, I think you should probably go and make sure just with your history, you're not having a stroke, and go in and see the doctor, make sure that you're okay. And she was a little resistant to it at first, and I really was insistent. I called her, and she went in, and guess what? She did have a stroke. She was having a dislodge, and like being able to send people to the right practitioners for that. I've got a lot of clients that are also working with mental health therapists, and it's not like we don't do our own work around certain areas, but being able to say like, hey, did you know like mental health services are available for you? Do you know that like your doctor can pull blood work for you and make sure year after year, or maybe several times a year, that, you're dealing with things well? It's like just encouraging them to be an advocate for all the resources available to them. I think that's huge. And the cool thing is like I have, clients who are nurse practitioners that become health coaches, or doctors or RNs that become health coaches. And really it's like they do it because they want to spend more time helping people and understanding, so those people can go get the right resources. And I know you really get that with what you've been through. Last, I guess, as we wrap up here, I'm just looking at the time, and I could talk to you forever, man. Is a little bit about your health heroes, man. Like, I'm gonna let you go first because I had to think about my health hero. But you tell me about your health hero, because you told me about it, and I was like, I didn't. We alluded to it a little bit, but like your health hero, and what kind of health do you really want for people that, the vision you see for the world based off the health heroes you've had in your life?
Yeah, so the first person who comes to mind is my great grandmother, right? So my grandmother, who I spoke about in Queens, growing up, my father's mom, she did pass away in her 80s, and it was interesting because she was very healthy. She just happened to have a stroke. It was a cluster stroke, and she just never really recovered from it. Um, Such a strong, powerful woman, and it was just one of those things when you see the deterioration. She had a little bit of dementia as the years went on. It was really impactful to say, like, just how quickly things can turn. But my great grandmother on my mother's side, she's 105, and she literally. So I got married 11 years ago, so she was 94 at my wedding, in high heels, decked out, dancing, and has all her cognitive function. She's in Toronto now. She basically lives on the second floor, which is, in a two-story house. She basically stays up there, goes down, up and down the stairs with no assistance, sharp as a tack. It's really unbelievable. Like usually when you're up past a certain age, they won't, like, stairs is not something that is even in your vocabulary, but
Or high heels, man.
oh yeah, forget the high.
Forget the high heels and stairs. Forget
it. So yeah, she's a health hero. I wish I would be able to share what her secret to her longevity is, but there's nothing there. Like, I wish she could say, "Oh, I never did this, I never did that." She kind of did everything, right? She had.
Yeah.
Obviously she wasn't necessarily like a smoker or a heavy drinker to that extent, but it's not like she'd never partaked in anything specifically. And I mean, she's just my hero as far as, like, I want to be there. I want to be at an age where I'm functional and still living a good life. That's really where I think that's the most important thing for me, and she's definitely someone close to me who I would consider a health hero. How about you?
That's so cool. Yeah, it's interesting because I think about this question because I've never really like dived into this. I don't have a lot of great health examples. Like even my father is an MD. It's like, man, we ate a lot of garbage because there's a lot of maybe money mindset stuff around what's the cheapest food, right? And it's gotten a lot better. But I think, to me, I have to say my health hero it's actually an athlete. It's George St. Pierre. George St. Pierre is the Canadian, the welterweight champion. Yeah, the Canadian champion. And what's really interesting about him is most pro athletes, I don't know if you knew this, but most like pro football players, they die relatively soon at the end of their career between the weight, the heart strain, the concussions. It's like they do not. I mean, I had one health professional I knew, and his thing was he specialized in pro athletes after they retired, and he would help them shrink from 300 pounds down to like 150 in a healthy way, so they had less strain on their heart. That way they could live for their families, because a lot of them would be, these big guys sitting at charity events, and then you'd hear like 2 years later they had a stroke or a heart attack and they were gone. And there's a little saying in health, it's small dogs live longer. Have you heard that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's true. And like George St. Pierre, it's really interesting because he doesn't compete anymore. He still takes really good care of himself. Like a lot of his stuff is just about, like, he's in his 40s now, but the amount of damage. I trained some martial arts for multiple years. Is kind of how I got into health and fitness. And the amount of damage you take doing MMA is ridiculous. Like a lot of those guys, I watched my instructor snap his shin straight in half in front of me, fall down, stand back up, fall back down, stand back up again, fall back down, and finally realize it was broken. And the whole bone had snapped in half. And that is super common for those guys, breaking these bones, getting shattered. And George St. Pierre, for some reason, of all the MMA guys, has just been really interested in taking super good care of himself. Like whether it's, and even just like the way he would approach training while he was an athlete, he would go learn gymnastics, he would go learn martial arts, he would just cross train to figure out how to optimize himself. Now he does a lot of stuff around cold exposure, which is really good, and organ meats. And he's just like very on the cusp. And he's someone that's interestingly for me gone, wow, here's a guy who could have just been like, I made a ton of money, I'm done. And my body was great and that was good. But he's like taking care of himself, very interested in learning more still. And he looks just as good as he did when he retired as the champion. And it's kind of interesting. So that would be my fitness hero.
Yeah, I gotta look into. I'm a fan of fighting, but I didn't realize all the extracurricular stuff that he was doing. So I'm gonna definitely take a peek at him and get to know him a little bit better.
Yeah, it's real interesting. So he's someone that signals longevity to me for a long time. So, as we wrap this up, I think it's important that the world knows, like, hey, the world needs health coaches. And for you, what do you want health coaches to know, man, as we're signing off?
Well, you could do it, absolutely. That's one of the things part of the reason why I created Health Coach Academy is to just let health coaches know about the passion that they have can be turned into a business. And most of the time when a health coach decides that they're going to wrap it up and not be a health coach or at least share their knowledge with other people, it's usually because they're not making it financially. And that's really where the genesis of Health Coach Academy is to have people like yourself on the show to talk about the business components of it, like how to really monetize stuff so that they're able to get into a position where they can do what they really love full time. So that's kind of my advice as far as where they should be going on their journey. And how about you? What do you think?
Oh man. My thing for health coaches really is, it's like, man, if you're in health coaching, you'll probably never be able to do anything else and feel as good. Like, it's one of those things that just leaves this, man, to change someone's life to a point where they're like, man, I think better, I see better, I make different decisions in my life. Like, that's to me how I got hooked at 17 years old. And I've been doing it now for 17 years, actually. So pretty much half my lifespan. So I just couldn't see myself doing anything else because it was so rewarding for me. And I think if you're listening to this and you've never really gotten to work with a client, I'm like, dude, just get a client and work with them at no charge. Like, what you'll find is it's so rewarding and it makes such an impact. To me, it's the single best thing you could ever do in your life, is help another human being heal and become healthy and be more vibrant and have more vitality and be more available to love and give to other people.
Yeah.
That's what I love about it. And you'll have to come back and talk about, I know we talked about your first client ever after you went and got all your education as a health coach, and kind of how that evolved. And yeah, I think that'd be a great conversation, because if you're listening to this and you're like, well, got all this training, but I haven't necessarily like charged people, or, what does that feel like? Trust me, we've all done it and we've all been there. Yeah. We know how it feels. And you have to realize it's like, man, that is a super normal thing. And it's super necessary in order to become a health coach. So yeah, that's something we can have a conversation about. I'd love to come back and do that with you, man. This has been fun.
No, likewise. Yeah, no, you've delivered yet again. So maybe if round 3 is on the horizon.
Awesome.
All right.
I appreciate you having me on, Omar. Always fun, man.
Likewise. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, brother.
Hope you enjoyed listening to today's episode of the Health Coach Academy podcast. If you did, jump over to iTunes and leave a rating and or review. It goes a long way in helping get this message out to our fellow health coaches and people in our industry. Also, if you can, jump over to my website, omarcumberbatch.com, where I give out a lot of freebies, including my 5-day sugar challenge for people who are having issues with sugar. And also for health coaches, I have the book, Hidden. It's the 6 not so obvious ways to get your clients unstuck. Have a great day.